Welcome in to Greenville Grit, Greenville residents in touch on 103.7 WTIB. This is the local show that keeps you connected and in touch with the issues that affect what's happening in your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Ribeyes, Kid Construction, and Greenville Toyota. Now, here are your hosts for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams and Michael Overton.
Good evening and welcome to Greenville Grit. I'm Terry Williams.
I'm Michael Overton and
I'm Dennis Mitchell.
And Dennis, thank you for coming back on the show today.
No
We're going to have
problem.
a unique one today because we've got early voting, I think, starting next week.
It starts the 23rd.
23rd, so it's
Which
coming
is
up
Thursday.
in a couple of days. Yeah. So let's talk about it. There's a lot of people running, and we've got to decipher who we can.
That's right.
And try to pull what information we can. And hopefully
Which is
between the three
hard
of
to
us, we can
find.
maybe give some direction to some people who are listening. And
Sure.
they might not like our opinions. They might like our opinions. We'll just have to go from there. But before we get into the show, we always have to thank the sponsors that allow the show to go on. So thank you for the Overton Group, real estate professionals serving all of Eastern North Carolina. For commercial real estate leasing and sales, business brokerage, property management, and residential brokerage. Also, we have Kid Construction Group, the Green Builder. KCGBuildGreen.com. Look at what Bill Kidd has done with the homes he built. He's a Parade of Homes winner, gold medal winner, and just builds a beautiful home. Again, KCGBuildGreen.com. We also have Greenville Toyota. If you're looking for a new Toyota or Scion vehicle or a new used car, go see Craig Ghost and the Greenville Toyota team at greenvilletoyota.com or across from Fresh Market on Memorial Drive. And our favorite, Terry,
Ribeyes.
Ribeyes Steakhouse.
Well, I like all our sponsors. It's just that
Yeah,
they're
we
the
can
ones that
eat
have
that
my
one.
favorite food.
Well, Ribeyes Steakhouse, located on Fire Tower Road at the corner of Arlington and Fire Tower. They also have a location in Williamston. If you go mention Greenville Grit, you get a surprise. I believe the surprise right now is a free dessert with the purchase of a
Great
meal
dessert.
if you mention the Greenville Grit. So please sponsor the show. Support the show by supporting our sponsors. We're going to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll come right back, and we'll start talking about the upcoming election. Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. I'm Michael Overton, along with my co-host, Terry Williams, and our Greenville Gritter, Dennis Mitchell. Dennis, again, thanks for coming back on the show today.
No problem.
We need to talk about election. And I tell you, we pulled the sample ballots last night. There is a lot of people
to think
running.
about. There is.
And I tried to spend a little bit of time thinking, hey, maybe I could do some comparisons and figure out where people stand. And after about the 7th or 8th one, I gave up.
No,
Because,
it's just a lot. And some of them have more extensive websites than others. And
Right. Well,
some of the websites answer your
Ballotpedia,
questions and some don't. You know.
There's a website called Ballotpedia that I found, and that'll give you a brief background.
Right.
There's also a website called On the Issues, and again, I don't know if these are conservative-leaning websites or liberal-leaning websites, but I know On the Issues, specifically like G.K. Butterfield, it gave a really long description of everything he'd voted for, on gun control, on abortion, on civil rights, everything all the way down. It was pretty interesting stuff. So let's start, I guess, in the one that we're all sick of seeing the ads. Let's talk about the U.S. Senate race. Dennis, why don't you start out on that one? Let's hear your opinions.
Like you said, we've been getting a lot of ads, a lot of outside money coming into this. So you can tell that this is a hotly contested national race.
No doubt.
And I think right now it's a toss-up. You know, people really don't know which way it's going to go. You have Kay Hagan, who everybody knows, who's been, I think, rightfully charged with not doing a lot in the Senate, have not sponsored too many legislations. And Tom
missed a lot of meetings.
missing a lot of meetings.
Said she didn't, admitted she did.
And then Tom Tillis, who had a mandate, got elected, and done a lot of things that he said he was going to do in office. So you got right now it's a toss up between those two. Kay Hagan is really pushing the women vote very hard, attacking Tom Tillis on those women's issues.
Yes.
And I think Tom is trying to hold on as much as he can because there's a lot of Democratic money coming here, which is unordinary.
Well, let's talk about the most recent ad I saw last week, and matter of fact, it was in the paper Sunday, I believe. Someone had written it on the article of Kay Hagan's family getting money from, I guess, solar energy or green renewable resources, her husband and her son.
Through the stimulus
Through
money?
the stimulus package. So that was very interesting.
Very interesting.
Frankly, I don't think very good for her because they didn't get the money back.
That's right. They didn't use it, but they kept it.
And they used it by buying the equipment from another company they formed.
Right, exactly.
So that was interesting.
There are lots of questions.
So if you haven't seen the Daily Reflector from yesterday, and I tell you something else that shocked me. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pick on the Daily Reflector, but the Daily Reflector chose Tom Tillis.
I know.
Someone said that.
They did.
I was
they
in
did.
shock
They
on that
endorsed Tom Tillis. And
Wow.
I liked what they said in the article, and I mean, I
They did.
think they were
Well,
right.
what was their
I
logic?
think
What was
they
their
were
reasoning
right.
for endorsing them?
Wish I had it in front of me.
I mean, well, what are some of the things they said about him? I'm curious.
Heck, me.
Getting
I
things
don't
done.
know.
We got to pull it up. And
Oh, yeah, get it
read
We
done.
try to pull it up.
But it was.
I think when it came down to
quite
the
interesting.
issues, and Dennis, you said it a few minutes ago, and this is specific to the Daily Reflector article, but Tom has done a lot. Now, you might not agree with everything he's done, but he was pretty upfront, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to get it done. Now, we're talking about Hagan, as you've said, hasn't done a lot, hasn't sponsored a lot. You know, her voting record, I remember she picked on Elizabeth Dole pretty bad when she ran.
She did.
Saying she had, I think, voted with Bush 92% of the time, where she's 95% Obama. You can't vote with anyone. I don't care who you are, if you're Republican or Democrat. Your leader is not always that right, that you're going to vote with anyone that much. I mean, that becomes almost a cult. Where everyone just follows it. And I don't like those party line politics.
No, she
I think
doesn't-
that's
she
not
can't-
good for
she
our
doesn't-
country.
I want to say she doesn't stand on her own, but I think unfortunately she just agrees with what he says. That's more of a problem to me than her not standing on her own, because his way has not worked. And
But what's the most amazing thing to me is I don't think at the beginning anybody would have gave Kay Hagan that much of a chance against Tom Tillis.
Right.
But I mean, you gotta say she's running
You
a
gotta
very
look at the money
effective
they're pouring
campaign.
in.
A lot of money
pouring in a
coming
lot,
in.
and the ads
effective
that are
campaign.
the ads that aren't really telling the whole truth. I mean, and I think that it's very. I mean,
Well, the
I have
Washington
been-
Post even said the ads weren't
they
telling the truth.
did, and that was reprinted in the front of the Daily Reflector, like a fact
Yep.
check or whatever. But I think that's been the hard thing. You know, we've been delving into all these different things, trying to get ready for this show today. The public isn't going to be able to decipher all
No.
of this that's going on. It's just too confusing, and it just really bothers me that really, where would we be if all sides told the truth? Then we could really make a good educated decision. Just tell the truth. Tell it like it is.
They
You
can't tell
do
the
that.
truth, because if they tell the
Because
truth, they won't
I
get
pulled
elected.
I pulled some things off the website about her voting record, and one of the things that has really bothered me, and I've gotten a lot of text about, what's Tom Tillis going to do about Medicare? What's he going to do? Is he going to cut our Medicare? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? When the real truth comes out and you look at Kay Hagan's voting record, I just have to say this. She voted to cut Medicare Advantage by $200 billion to pay for Obamacare. She supported that. She voted against protecting Medicare Advantage from cuts in 2009, not just recently. I mean, you know, when all of this discussion, she voted again to not protect Medicare Advantage from cuts in 2010. She has just the very thing that she's trying to scare everybody into. She has supported by supporting Obamacare, and Obamacare having to cut Medicare $200 billion to pay for everything. So she's really just not, she's throwing things out there, and this is just one example, but really just not telling the truth.
Well,
She's just simply not telling the truth.
I tell you,
And that bothers me,
opinion,
Michael, and it bothers me that I have friends and people who are supporting her, and she's not telling the truth, like the teachers. It bothers me for the teachers to get on these commercials and say, we don't have textbooks and we don't have this and that and the other, and know that they're in our classrooms leading our children every day, and they're not telling the truth. Because he did, in fact, support $23 million in textbook funding in 2013, 2014. So it's simply not the truth. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the one teacher in Cary is actually showing up in another ad having to do something with teaching, but not quite the ad that she started out with about cutting the textbooks. I'd really like to meet her.
well,
and
they've
talk
had
to
to
her.
change their tune a few times after Washington Post article called them
I
out and
think
said,
so,
"Oh, well,
too.
that's not quite true. We've had maybe we can argue this point, but
Yeah.
all
just
right,
really
we'll make
worries
the
me.
call. Who you voting for?
What do you mean?
Well, who you
of
voting
course,
for?
I'm supporting Tom Tillis. I think it's the only way that we have.
And hopefully
to
the Greg
go.
Brandon people.
And
If you support a Greg Brandon, I mean, I respect that, but in this election,
I don't respect what he did. He
well,
should
no,
be
I'm talking about
supporting.
what people need to be supporting
Yeah,
Tom Tillis.
yeah,
It's
they
either
do.
you don't
They
support
really
Tom
do.
Tillis, you put Kay
You're
Hagan back. If
supporting
you don't
Kay
want, that's
Hagan.
fine. Dennis, who's your call?
You know what? Because when you said that, I was like, I really haven't decided yet because I have issues with both candidates. Mm-hmm. So we'll
Dennis
see.
is up in the air.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, I'm on Tom Tillis on that one. So, U.S. House of Representatives, District 1, Arthur Rich versus G.K. Butterfield. Any opinions on that?
Well, I've had an opportunity to meet Arthur Rich at 3 or 4 Republican gatherings, fundraisers, whatever you want to call them. He's got some really good ideas. Whether or not they'll work, I mean, I don't know. But one of them in particular is stopping taxing Social Security income. And I think
I believe he's also proposing
is
stopping taxing the minimum wage,
he
too.
is. There's some ideas he's got that he thinks would help, seniors and lower income people, and they don't sound that bad.
Well, on some of my research last night, I did see where G.K. Butterfield had missed quite a bit more of the roll calls than the average.
Right.
So that's a concern. I'm going to say obviously support Arthur Rich on that one, more of the conservative candidate. And another, and this is going to come back to bite me, I know, but we've got to get into term limits.
Right.
For all of these people. Lifetime politicians. You start out, I feel, a lot of these people start out with the intent of helping the public. But after you stay in power for a certain amount of time, corruptness happens. Whether you believe it or not, whether you want it or not, you start, instead of serving the public, you're more serving yourself.
Yes, a sense of self-entitlement sits in, like, this is my seat. You start doing things to promote yourself instead of promote
Well, that's one of the things I like about Tom Tillis. He did say as Speaker of the House, I'm doing 2 terms, that's it.
He did, and he also has agreed, if elected, to sign I don't know if it's a petition, I'm not sure, I guess an agreement, agreeing with term limits in the House and the Senate. 3 terms for House, 2 terms for Senate. Kay Hagan will not, she will not agree.
Well, G.K. Butterfield's in his 4th term at this point. He started out in 2004. Again, I just feel it's time for change. We've got to have term limits. I mean, that's a discussion that people have got to
How do you feel
consider.
about that,
Any other
Dennis?
thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm with you on the term limits, but the 1st district is a very unique, poor district.
It is.
And if you really get out of the politics of it, GK has done a lot for bringing a lot of resources to that area. So, I mean, I know him. He's a great guy, and I'm still going to have to stick with him on that one.
Right.
All right.
It is a large district.
Very huge.
25
huge district.
counties
Yeah.
or something.
Oh, yeah.
And extends, I
To
couldn't
Durham.
believe it. Yeah, it does. I was really quite surprised.
All right.
And then we switch. We're talking about term limits, and then the next category
Well, and that's
is
why I
Walter
said it's going to come
Jones.
back to bite me. I mean,
Yeah.
Walter's done a lot for the area. We have a lot of respect for Walter. He was on the show a few weeks ago, and I actually tried to find some information on Marshall Adam. I guess
Adami.
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 Couldn't find a lot. I don't really know quite where he stands on a lot of things. He does look like he's a vet or veteran.
He's a former United States Marine. I think he ran for this seat before. A perennial runner. But pretty much that's it, former vet.
Well, I think Walter Jones has done a lot for the area, but let's go back to term limits. And again, I'm sorry to have to say it, but I think he's in his he's been in since the mid-'90s, and so.
And he came on the getting rich promise of serving term limits too.
Right. Well, I think the other issue we have, I heard Marshall Adami interviewed on Tom and Sadie's show, and I'm sure he's a fine person, but I wasn't that impressed.
I wasn't either.
I was not impressed. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't say
just
anything.
think,
I don't know anything,
That's
so.
okay. I just think that we have to have. I understand the term limits too. If there is someone who can step in, in a place like Walter and get the things done he's done, then that's one thing. But I haven't seen that come up in the district where someone has challenged him that I felt like could carry on like he has and will speak his mind. I heard him speak again on Friday night. And, I mean, he just gets up and tells you like it is. He is one of the few that will do that.
You're talking about Walter?
Walter.
Well, and one of the things
I
they did say is
that.
he is one of the more moderate, right-of-center Democrats that has a higher chance of breaking away from Republican. I'm sorry,
No problem.
but has a higher degree of breaking away from party lines than most.
Well, I'll tell
and
you
I
what.
respect that. And
Well,
at least he can stand on his own.
he's in the Democratic district. A lot of people don't understand
Yeah,
that. That's
he
the
does-
Democratic
he is.
district. But I think one thing that people in that district love about him the most, you will not find someone that's more champion for the military than Walter
No.
Jones. He's
and
a
we
fighter
have
for
to
him.
have someone there. Look at
got
what our
to.
state relies on that.
Especially
well,
the
our
eastern part of
country
the state.
relies on the security of it. But I also think with Walter, he tells the truth, which is what I said earlier. He tells it like it is. He will not make any bones about it, will not butter anything up. He just comes out with the facts and
He's a
says,
man of
this is what it
conviction,
is, and has his information to back up what he's talking about.
So what do you think, Dennis?
Walter Jones on that one.
All right, Terry, Walter?
Absolutely.
I'm on Walter also. Not much to talk about. District 5 is Don Davis. He is running unchallenged on that. Have you had I haven't had a chance to meet Don yet. Dennis, what's your opinion?
Don is a friend of mine. As growing up here, East Carolina University. I mean, seeing him as Mayor Snow Hill, of course, he was always, I don't mind just being an African American in a high position. So Don's a good guy. You know, he's, of course, it's a majority minority district. I think that's why he's unopposed in this district. So I think he's a steady voice for Democrats in that district because it is a Democratic majority minority. So, I mean, I guess I go with him since he's the only one there. But I think Don's a good guy. He's also a friend of mine as well.
All right. North Carolina State Senate District 7 is Lewis Pate and Eric Anderson. Now, I did finally found some information a little bit on Eric at his website. He is a resident of Winterville, graduate of East Carolina University. But don't really know where he stands on the issues. And that was one thing I was disappointed in the website because I couldn't find anything outside of
either.
my wife. I went to school and
Right.
I've worked somewhere, so I just don't know anything about him.
Eric Anderson actually ran against Walter Jones last time as a Democrat candidate.
You're right.
He actually did a decent job. When you say decent, as far as getting, I think he got as close as any other Democrat.
Like 30-some% of the
which
votes, I
was
believe.
Still a wide range. Like I said, he's a strong Democrat for people who are looking as far as values and trying to figure out where they stand at. But I think as far as resources, he's probably a little bit outmatched against Lewis Pate.
All right. Who you going to pull on that one?
I'm not in that district.
Okay, but you got to have an opinion, don't you?
I didn't think about that one.
Terry?
We don't really, believe it or not, have an opinion about everything.
Oh, come on now. North Carolina House Representative District 8 is Susan
support
Martin and
Lewis
Bobby
Pate.
Gregory. Again, I know that's kind of the Wilson district. It's outside of what we serve.
It's part of Pitt County.
I think,
Wilson.
is it the
small-
Farmville area or kind of off the?
Yes.
Okay.
Part of Pitt County.
All right. Well, let's talk about one we do have a vote for. North Carolina House of Representatives District 9, Brian Brown and Uriah Ward. Terry, take the floor on that
Oh,
one.
well, Brian, we've had, several discussions with Brian. We certainly know what he has helped the Republicans do for North Carolina. He has supported ECU and the funding in the med school. He's just really, in the short amount of time that he's been there, I feel like really more than pulled his weight and helped us in Eastern North Carolina. So obviously, I'm a Brian Brown supporter. I think that he's got, even though the short amount of time, he still has gained huge amount of respect and has a lot of experience now serving. He's a businessman. I do not know and can't find anything really that Uriah Ward, at his very young age, hasn't had time to accomplish a whole lot yet.
He was Calvin Mercer's campaign manager.
Yes, he was. He accomplished that, I guess. But
Well, I think he is a student in East Carolina.
Yes, he
and
is.
It seems one of the opinions, if you look on his website, he gives a lot of opinion on education. But there's a lot more to the state than just education.
that's
And,
right. And
not a
plus, you have to
discounting
have the
teachers.
education facts correct, and he
But
doesn't have them correct.
If we have any question, now I'm not talking about Uriah, I don't know him, but if you have any question about lack of experience and what it can do, look at our president.
I'm telling
You put someone who had never worked in the private sector that I know of, and had only done some community organization, and you put them in the charge. It's kind of like when we ran Overton's. If I'd have taken someone off the street and said, I'm going to make you charge of our marketing department, our marketing, it would have run our company out of
In the
business
ground,
in a few
yeah,
years.
absolutely.
You cannot put people in positions of power and in positions of leadership with two things. They don't have the leadership ability,
Right.
and they don't have the skills. And I feel you've got to have both.
Well,
And
and I
that's my
think-
concern with, and this is nothing to pick on Uriah, but this is a lot of them. If you don't have that experience in leadership and the experience in what you're going to be voting on, don't tell me how to run my business when you've never worked in the private sector or
Exactly.
managed people or made a payroll. Don't tell me that. That
That's
drives
right.
me nuts.
No, I agree.
I think Uriah is probably up and coming political star in the Democratic Party. Like you say, he's very young. I think his heart is in the right place. I think he's putting some issues out there. When I look at this race and any other state race, I have a lot of disagreements with Brian Brown as far as the issues.
Right.
But as far as, and I look at a lot of things locally by being on the city council before. We called on Brian Brown several times. I mean, he gets things done very quickly. I had to call him in the private sector for a company I work for that wasn't getting paid for Medicaid.
Right.
He got things done quickly. I mean, the people were calling me back saying, "Look, we got to report back to the governor's office. Is this thing resolved?"
Right.
So as far as constituent issues and local issues, I mean, he's been second to none, and I've dealt with a lot of state legislators on that. So just by that and looking at things through a local level, I mean, Brian
And that's
Brown
what we
has to be the
need.
guy.
Our local representative is supposed to support the needs of the area that he serves.
That's right.
So you make the call on that one.
Brian Brown.
Brian Brown. All right. Next, what you want to talk about? Several of these are
Well, a lot of commissioner races, and they're
Yeah.
important to us. Of course, any of local politics is just what we normally try to, talk about a lot. But they
Well,
all
the-
seem to be,
the
very
Republican Party
important.
has issued their stance on some people. So I'll
Yes,
at least
they
read through
have.
theirs. I do not have the Democratic parties or know what theirs is. But Dennis, please feel free to chime in on any of the ones. District 3 Board of Commissioners, they called on Charles Farley. District 4, they called on Benji Holloman. District 5, they called on Jimmy Garris. District 6, they called on Glenn Webb. And so, your opinion on any of these?
Well, I'll have to tell you, I'm sticking with the Republican candidates on this.
Okay, Dennis?
I like their views on business and
And my thing gets a little cloudy by party affiliation, but when you get these local candidates, I know some of these people. So
And I know.
and across the party line. So when you look at it, of course, I think Mary Williams, and they weren't on her list because she's a Democrat.
Right.
I mean, she beat the 24-year incumbent. What's his name?
Oh, that was District 2. I didn't even call that one
Eugene
out.
James.
So.
Eugene James. I mean, so she deserves that seat. I don't know who this unaffiliated guy came up with, but I think he's a number Democrat. But Mary Williams won that seat, and that should be hers. I know Charles Farley. He came and I talked to him a lot on a lot of city council issues. He wants to serve. I think his will
Right.
is there. I think he was on the conservation board or Wool and Soil or one of those boards.
Soil and Water.
Soil and Water. So I think he'd be a good person for that. I think we talk about people who've been in office for a while. Tom Johnson, I think, was elected, then then sat out for a while, and then got elected again. I think it's time for some new blood in that one. So I like Charles Farley. Of course, District 4, I go with Mark Owens on that one.
how
District
many
5,
terms has Mark Owens served there? He's been there
he's
for
been
a
there
while,
for a while.
but made good decisions.
Yeah.
You think?
I think so.
All right.
District 5, of course, is a little difficult too because I respect Jimmy Garris a lot, but I know Johnny Rouse well, and I think he'll be a great addition to the Board of Commissioners. District 6 is, again, Kenneth Rouse always does an excellent job getting our county fair going. He has a will to serve. He's been on there before. But I think Glenn Webb is a rising star in the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to see him on a state level, maybe
He
even a
will.
national level one day. So he's a great guy as well.
He's done a good job, and he also in the commissioners statewide holds a position there. So he's certainly gotten the attention of beyond Pitt County.
Well,
One thing I really like about him is the not closed session votes. I never
Right.
thought about that when I was city council.
Yeah.
You're right. Everything should happen in public. Why take it to the closed session?
Well, the last two before we get and take our quick break before we do the county clerk, we've got Chris Johnson, a Republican, running against Sarah Beth Fulford Rhodes, a Democrat.
She's the incumbent.
Yeah, she is the incumbent, and I know Sarah Beth. I don't know Chris. I know Sarah Beth pretty well. Terry, your opinion?
Well, I think she's done well, and I would probably
I
support her.
think
in
I think
this
she
race.
has too. Dennis, what you think? And county sheriff, there's only one, but I am a supporter of Neil Ellis. I think he's done a phenomenal job as sheriff and has represented our,
Oh, I do
our area
too.
well.
think so,
And I
too.
thought there were
Fully
going to be
support
two
Neil.
names on the ballot though, but there's only one
There
showing
is
up
only
here.
one. I think that was with the primary.
Okay,
Yeah, it was two
that's
Democrats.
it.
Yeah.
That's
Two
it.
Democrats.
Primary.
Okay, well, we are going to go back, take our second commercial break, come back, and wrap the show up.
I'd like
Be
to
back
talk
in 2
about some
minutes.
judges.
Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. I'm Michael Overton along with Terry Williams and Dennis Mitchell. Dennis, we're going to talk about very quickly the judges. We only have about 3 minutes left in the show, but the one I want to discuss first is NC District Court Judge, District 3A is Ferris Dixon running against Lee Teague. Lee Teague is a friend of mine.
Mine too.
I've only talked to Ferris probably one time on the phone, but I think Lee, having seen all sides of being a defender, a prosecutor, a judge, plus his values as a person. I mean, I'm definitely a supporter of Lee Teague on this. Dennis, where are you at on this one, man?
I mean, I guess I'm the same way you guys are. Ferris Dixon's a friend of mine. I don't know Lee Teague at all. Me and Ferris go to church together. I mean, I think when they all ran against each other initially, Ferris had the most experience. I think he was backed by the Bar Association in Pitt County, and he won the race against the three candidates originally in the primary. So I'm with Ferris Dixon on that one.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I think it's really important that people do understand you need to know your judges before you go in that voting
Why don't you run down and give the
poll.
conservative judges real quick?
Well,
in
the thing
case
that I
people do
want to
want
say
that.
real quickly, and what bothers me the most is if you don't want your vote to be continuously turned over by the courts. You better put some conservative people in there that believe that the vote should stand as the public voted it. And I'm talking about marriage between a man and a woman and the vote being overturned recently. Our state voted 61% to keep it recognizing marriage between a man and a woman. I just don't think that's right. I just don't. I think there's
I'm
something
interested
wrong with
to know where the Republicans stand on the NC District Court Judge 3A.
Gwen Hilburn.
Republicans are choosing Glenn Hilburn?
That's who they chose.
The
Your
Democrats.
choice
See
is
that.
David Sutton or Gwen Hilburn.
The Democrat?
I'm not going to say anything else. You need to read the paper, Mark. And I know Marvin Blunt well. He's running unopposed for Superior Court Judge 3A. Marvin's a good guy. North Carolina Court of Appeals judge, they're choosing Paul Holcomb over Mark Davis. And North Carolina Appeals judge is Donna Stroud running unopposed. Another Court of Appeals judge is Bill Southern over Lucy Inman. Mark Martin, I believe that's one that we're choosing
He's
in this
currently the
district.
Chief Justice.
Yeah,
That's
and so
right.
a lot of support from Mark, and I think most
Absolutely.
people seem to like the job he's done. And do we vote on any of the other ones, though? That's the issue I just don't understand. And I tell you what was really confusing is the North Carolina Appeals judge. It's got about
is.
15 different people running.
Yeah, there are a lot.
So-
You really need to know before you go into those polls who to vote for.
And
Well-
as far as the school board, I really don't know too much about the candidates except District 1. That's one of those combination seats. Mary Blunt Williams and Robert Moore were sitting on the school board. Those seats can be combined, but I'm actually supporting Minnie Johnson Anderson on that one.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's an interesting show. Always
Very.
talking about it, getting opinions. Always have to thank the sponsors one more time: the Overton Group, Ribeye Steakhouse, Greenville Toyota, and Kidd Construction Group. Thank you for joining in. You can see us on Friday night at 6:30 and Saturday morning at 9:30 on Cable 7. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Have a good day.